I'm seeing there's a trend of a convergence of different roles. CPTO is a more common one. It's very typical as you get more senior in your career that there's opportunities to learn different areas. And marketing just seemed that there was an opportunity to bring product and marketing closer. The product person knows a customer, just like the marketing person needs to know the customer. For me, I always think about how I can be a better product leader, and taking over marketing and learning the marketing function is only going to make me a better product leader. It's not so different than my consumer experience as a product leader, because you're very much thinking about the deep data and the conversion funnels and really understand what's going to drive the conversion of where you want to go.
Welcome to LaunchPod, the show from LogRocket where we sit down with top product and digital leaders. Today, we're joined by Karen Chao, Chief Product Officer at Flowspace, an e-commerce logistics platform where she's also taken on the role as head of marketing. Previously, Karen held product leadership roles at Apple, Replicon, Innit, and more. In this episode, Karen shares how she ended up running marketing on top of product and how bringing these two functions under one leader has improved go-to-market for Flowspace overall. The biggest surprises she's uncovered running marketing as a product leader, from chaotic tool stacks to the next wave of AI-powered go-to-market automation, and the obligatory information about how Flowspace's product team uses AI tools like Cursor and Claude to accelerate discovery and prototyping, and even ship small bug fixes straight to production without engineers involved. So here's our episode with Karen Chao. All right, hey Karen, thanks for coming on the show. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
You've been a bit all over the place, right? So you're CPO and running marketing at Flowspace right now. You've run product across multiple startups, multiple verticals. You worked in product at Apple, engineering degrees from Stanford and UC Berkeley. We're going to talk about today how Flowspace, your team, is adopting AI at a just rapid clip and all sorts of neat things they're doing, but as well as what it looks like when a CPO takes on marketing. So that's gonna be a fun conversation as someone whose background is in marketing. But maybe you want to give us the 90-second TLDR on who is Karen, how'd you get here, and hit the high notes for us.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been a product leader for over 20 years now. I kind of fell into product. Back in the day, there wasn't such thing as product management. So when I actually got out of college, my first job was in the supply chain industry, and I was a business analyst, and slowly started looking around and thinking, oh my gosh, this isn't the right role for me, a quarter life crisis here, and decided, and started looking at it to see what interesting roles there were, and product management kind of like stood out to me. And so I transitioned to product management and I'm doing it ever since, mainly at smaller companies. I started off in like kind of data, then moved into the mobile consumer space, then transitioned into more B2B SaaS, and more recently have really fell into more of an operational businesses. So Flowspace, we're doing fulfillment. We have a very different model. So we manage it all through our technology as well as our people. My role is really instrumental in terms of making sure our performance is up and we're able to manage outcomes for our customers.
We are, I assume, catching you right before a very busy season hits the company.
Oh, yes, 100%. Peak season is coming up. So a lot of the recent conversations and plans within the organization is all about getting ready for peak and really make sure we can hit those volumes.
Well, I'm glad we were able to sneak in before what Black Friday and Cyber Monday hit. And
Yes.
Yeah, you become completely unavailable for a couple of months there. I guess let's just jump right into it, right? One of the things that led to us talking originally was it seems like across the board, as I talk to product leaders, everyone is at some level either having their board or their leadership team saying, what's your AI philosophy or what's your AI plan? Or they are diving headlong into it and they have the thing that they're proselytizing around AI. And I'd say Flowspace is kind of in the latter camp where you all are quite advanced. So I'd love to just jump in and maybe give people like the set of like, what is product using AI for? So this is not in the product, but this is how you folks are using it. And we can get into like, how'd y'all get there?
Yeah. Great question, because I go to a lot of these product events. I'm talking to other product leaders and everyone's always talking about, okay, how are you using AI? And there's like a dearth of tools and it's hard to through the noise of what really works and what doesn't work. And at the end of the day, I think it's just like kind of tinkering with things, because until you try it, you won't know if it really performs. Like they sell you this dream, and in reality, it may or may not work for your use case. So I'll say building our AI into our tool did give us a really great background on thinking about how AI works, just, writing prompts in more detail to like versus using it as a layperson, asking ad hoc questions about how to write this email better. If you're writing true prompts to create an outcome for your product, you just get really good at knowing the nuance of how to use AI, and specifically tools that we're using. And there's probably a ton of tools that are still an opportunity for us to use. But more recently, we started using tools that allow us to just improve our product discovery and development process. And a few things that are interesting is obviously we talked to ChatGPT about this PRD. We might do some deep research on the industry or how other people are doing, just more competitive analysis in adjacent industries of like how we might design a feature. So we'll kind of do that on the business side. But then on more of the technical side, we're using Cursor and Claude, and it's hooked up to our code base. So we have a GitHub integration that's native. And we're starting to use it to start asking questions that we might ask our tech lead, right? Questions like, hey, I'm thinking about this functionality. Here's the context. Here's like the features. Here's how we're thinking about how it would work. Kind of poke holes through this. What scenarios or quarter cases am I thinking about? It's just really giving us a good first pass on how to figure out and really bulletproof our product requirements documents so that we can have an even more effective conversation with our engineering lead later, right? We kind of get through kind of the early stage and we kind of go deeper with the tech lead. But, it's not about replacing engineers, it's more like being better prepared.
Yeah, it's interesting because kind of talk about that, right? We use GitHub, and I think a lot of our engineers use Cursor, but we're at the point now where we're launching a new product. By the time this one publishes, we probably already launched it, where we have a new free kind of AI feedback analytics tool that we're offering. And in the past, we had to work with an engineer to design the page and build it and all that kind of stuff. And I was able to just go in myself and use Claude. And there's animation and all sorts of stuff that we didn't even have to do that. We need still have to have a code review and the engineer do the final steps. But like you said, it kind of gets you a lot farther, a lot faster. That's clearly a lot easier than building the product itself. But the conversation happens a lot faster when you have that further long starting point to talk to engineers from.
Yeah, 100%. And even things that we might ask engineers, we don't need to because we'll ask Claude or Cursor.
Yeah.
Oh, when did this feature launch? Or what are all the conditions? Or, like little nuanced questions. And the other thing that's really exciting that, when I talk to other product leaders, this isn't something that their team is doing yet necessarily, but some folks on my team have gotten really into these coding agents and are actually starting to like push out code fixes. So small bug fixes, for example, the data already exists, but it might be missing in a certain page. We're able to make those changes using these agents and pushing those out. And obviously it goes through the typical development cycle where it has to pass the automated tests and someone has to review it and merge it into master. But those are things that we can do instead of sending it to the engineer, because obviously, as you know, like everyone's got a backlog full of stuff and engineers are working on projects. And so sometimes these small fixes just are really, really hard to sneak in. And so my team can start picking those up.
It seems like it's just ticky-tack little stuff. It's like if you could assign half a point, it'd be half a point or less often. But you still want to get to someone good who's going to do it quickly and make sure it's done right and go pay attention to it. But they don't want to do it. Like it's boring. It's not interesting. But also from a more pragmatic state, if they're working, like you said, on a big project, it's going to take them out of flow state of that thing or the focus. Like everything has switching costs, and to switch this little half point thing, now they have to like get back into the flow. And it's just, I love that you all are kind of doing that, where as you find stuff, if it's the little things, you can just ship to prod. And like you said, it's going to go through code review as it should, and then, merge the main. But it's not about saving the half point, because the half point is probably a little meaningless. It's all the friction around it, and also knowing that you're not waiting like 2 sprints to fix this thing that, probably isn't incredibly impactful to your users, but it's definitely, if you look at a lot of those over time, that's a lot of impact to user experience.
I agree with you. Those little friction points are where it's like, how can you solve for those quicker is a true opportunity. I'll also say something that's interesting is there was another project, and see, this is where like everyone is using it slightly differently. And one of the things that I think is good for people to do from an organizational perspective is just really knowledge share and how people are using it so that they can kind of adopt the best practice. But on another project, the way they started writing the stories were very, very different, almost thinking in context of working with the agent to write the stories, to like have the agent understand the stories. And so the way we wrote the stories was different. And that was actually helping speed up the project as well.
So you were working with the agent to write the story for the actual kind of like original dev ticket or dev feature or PRD, and then but using the same agent to then build so it had context as it is.
So if you think about, well, one, it's like knowing what's going to work better in AI and what's not going to work better in AI. So there's some thought around, okay, this kind of story might work better in AI. And they're really starting off writing the story in a way where you're just going to give it to the agent to do.
Interesting. So is that your product team using that now to build, I guess, prototype, or is that like finished?
No, that's working with the engineers. Like the engineers are, that's just in our normal development cycle where the engineers are starting to think about how to use the agents as well. And then obviously there's some more complex deep in the code types of functionality that we don't feel comfortable using the agent, but then there's some other types of stories that you're like, okay, let's give this a go. And it's like about learning about how to write the story and how to like prompt it in a way where you get a good output.
Oh, yeah,
One
yeah.
shot doesn't typically work. You might have to have multiple iterations.
Right. But it is interesting, even like if you look at the foundational models, some of them I feel like do better with, you can give it a multi-step, just one shot, but lay it out. Like you said, as long as you lay it out well, like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, it'll sequentially go through. But then some of the other ones might be really good at writing or something. But if you give it a 5-step thing, it'll do step 1 and then maybe step 2 and then kind of drift. And
the thing about the attention span and also their over eagerness to write too much code. So actually something I've tried writing some functionality as well. And what I've learned from my own tinkering is that it's really good to just ask it for steps. First, I'll understand, okay, how does it currently work? And I'll kind of understand the code and how it's written. And then I'll ask it to write me a pseudocode based on the context I'm trying to develop. And then it'll give me some context on that, and I'll give it direction on it, because it'll make assumptions and you might have missed something. And so then you have to like go correct some of those assumptions. And then you ask it to write the code. You have to first start with the framework of like, understand what's happening right now, and then ask it to create a plan, and then you can review that plan and then execute it.
we use Claude on our application for like a coding agent. But before that, I was using Lovable to build some products we just use internally on the marketing team for like things that no one's going to make because the use case is so narrowly defined. But we have 3 people here who use it all the time now. The first one I made is utter trash. I look at it and it took me so long to make just a piece of hot garbage that barely functions. But as I got better about kind of understanding like how do you prompt it, working through ChatGPT to build the set of prompts first and finding all those corner cases first, pre-answering questions or being clear to like give it space to ask questions. It takes a quarter of the time to build something 5 times better now, but it really is like, it's learning almost a slightly, maybe not a different language, but a different vernacular of the same language.
100%.
Well, on the bug fixing and kind of minor change side, have you found that helps with how you all are working with engineering better, or like has that helped kind of team cohesion or kind of focus of the teams across everything? Are you pleased with how that's going?
Yeah, I am. I think they're like we call them quality of life issues for our customers where, like you mentioned, like you would never prioritize this. It's hard to get in the backlog. Engineers don't want to focus on that because they're focusing on their core projects. We're holding them accountable to these sprint goals for these projects. We have deadlines for those. And it's just a little bit of a distraction. And sometimes it's like, yeah, it's just hard to justify. And so those are the opportunities where my team goes in and tries to tinker, and we submit our own PRs for those. And they're a little, I don't want to like overstate how much we're doing this because it's a little bit few and far between. I mean, I think there is a balance because I don't want my team to turn into like mini developers. It's an opportunity for us to learn, but most of their focus should be talking to customers, building out new functionality and really doing that upfront discovery versus like doing bug fixes. But I think it's still a great learning opportunity, and I want people to be confident in using these tools.
No, I think it's a good area. We've done a lot of research and validation on this piece specifically because we started doing session replay for kind of engineering context. One of the things we found that we have several customers on like an alpha of now is this, like it's basically we will pull we can see the minor issues, find the replay and capture that and kind of understand what's impacting users and see code complexity. And when it is one of those kind of like minor nits, now we have the agent integrated into, you guys at GitHub, right? It would integrate into your GitHub and it can ship those kind of little ticky-tack fixes. But it's the same thing you described. Like it goes to code review, an engineer's still going to review it. But we found that people using it, they're happy that stuff isn't just in the backlog and they can get it done. But it's also like culturally has been more helpful than I think I realized it was going to be, where they don't have to go ask engineers to do these things now. They can focus on talking to, like you said, customers, or they can talk to engineers about bigger things. And so it's a cool area. I think we're going to see a lot of innovation in of like this idea of self-healing software, right? And you're still going to need people for the big, right? But that's, I mean, that was the future promised to us a long time ago with AI, was this kind of stuff. But it leaves product people open to do a lot more interesting stuff. But you don't want to be coders, right? The same way engineers don't want to be cleaning up these little BS things. So like, I think it's an interesting future. It's really cool to see kind of how you all have already picked that up and been running with that. Nice. I did the math last night on this. I think over the year or so, I've talked about 500 product leaders between dinners we've done and the podcast and everything. Very few people are doing that at this point, or doing, I think, effectively at scale. So that's really cool to see. One other thing, if we can jump real quick, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about that's near and dear to my heart selfishly is something that I've seen a lot across. We've seen a lot of people where CPOs are jumping in to kind of the CPTO role, right? right? Being chief product and technology officer. You kind of ended up going the other way over at Flowspace. And I don't know what the technical title is, but you're CPO and running go-to-market or marketing. How'd that happen? I do think that this is something we're going to see more and more is not just CPTO, but people from product also taking over more go-to-market pieces.
Yeah, for me, I've always, I'm seeing there's a trend of like a convergence of different roles. Like you mentioned, CPTO is a more common one, but I think it's very typical as you get more senior in your career that there's opportunities to learn different areas and kind of bring a different lens on them. And marketing just seemed that there was an opportunity to bring product and marketing closer together. So the product person knows a customer, just like the marketing person needs to know the customer. I obviously know the product really well. I can help represent what the product does. And also for me, I always think about how I can be a better product leader, and taking over marketing and learning the marketing function is only going to be making me a better product leader, even if I don't do it ever again. It's actually kind of funny because as I'm digging in and learning, it's not so different than my consumer experience as a product leader, because you're very much thinking about kind of the deep data and the conversion funnels and kind of just like really understand what's going to drive the conversion of where you want to go. So obviously the way you go about it can be very different. The different channels, there's obviously a lot of things that I'm not an expert on, but I think as a leader, it's about hiring and having the right team that can go execute on your overall strategy.
I've kind of always joked to people like marketing's not hard at the really.
This. They're like, It's not hard. I'm like, oh, well, right now I'm learning a bunch of new things, but
I think to say it is a gross oversimplification. The same way like product isn't hard, right? All you want to do is build the product that people want, right? Just solve a problem. How hard is it?
Yeah, just do that.
It's the same way marketing, just find out who you want to know what you guys do and communicate it to them and get
on these channels.
Well, that's where right. I think at core, right, to almost just probably, I think it would be easier to step in and run marketing from kind of a product side role or something like that than it would be to come up through it and really, because you have to like learn you're probably not in Google AdWords or something like that, managing bids.
That's a specialty too.
That's a specialty. Like that's a skill like engineering though. Like you can't just like intuitively engineer, but product and marketing have elements where you can, talk to users and there's a bit of taste involved more so. And I think that's what I mean. Like the goals are pretty straightforward. Whereas engineering is like, you have to know how to write code in Flutter if you want to build a mobile app in Flutter. Obviously there's other ways to do it too, but like, so that's always been the joke. Like obviously the success failure lies in the details and the execution that can be, I think difficult is the wrong word, but like you have to have the right strategy. You have to execute it really well. But you can't just kind of come in and do it.
Yeah, I don't, for sure. And I think the reason why they asked me is, one, I know the customer, I know the space,
which is a great point. Like you have such a deep knowledge of the customer in the space. You're already halfway there.
Yeah. And then I think marketing is very multifaceted. There's obviously lots of different channels, lots of different strategies. But at the same time, something I feel really passionate about is like, as a product leader and now a marketing leader, like there's no one playbook. The playbook's always going to be changing for any organization, especially now, especially with like AI, and we're starting to see more AI referrals, for example. There can be marketers that are maybe less technical, less aware of AI. And I think every person in their functional and every function needs to be thinking about how AI can help them be more effective going forward in this new way of working. And I've definitely been thinking about that, not like AI, not just for a product perspective, but also from a marketing perspective, because we're being asked to do, more with less. So I just think about, there's all these AI go-to-market tools and, I'm looking at some of the existing tools and I'm thinking, why can't they do these things? And so I'm looking at add-on tools to, get us better at like some of this automation, because I think there's just gonna be a different way of working on the marketing side, especially, that just needs to be thought through. And I think as a product leader, that's an area that I can really help chip in for the company.
Yeah. I mean, I think it makes sense. Like I've kind of talked about on the show before, I run marketing here at LogRocket, but I've worked closely with our product team for the entire 7 years I've been here. I'm fairly involved there in product discovery because, like you said, it's the same basic research we do on marketing applies to product. What should we build? What product should we solve? What are the problems people have? How do they think about those problems? I would never even think of going and having input on engineering beyond, hey, do you think you can just do this faster, please? Because I don't have that skill set. So was that kind of the thought process behind it, was bring those two groups closer together because naturally there's synergy? Or
Yeah, I think it was a little bit do more with less, but also making sure there was like more alignment between product marketing. I think, sometimes not based on any sort of ill intent, like people end up working in silos just because there's like too much to do and too much to focus on. So this way we're more connected. I have oversight over both and can really just help drive the team for just better outcomes. I also say like my personal working style is, especially working in somewhat smaller organizations, being more of a startup leader, is just getting in the weeds. Sometimes you haven't figured it all out yet. It's not like you're running a massive machine. You're still figuring out what are the right channels. You're lighting up new channels. You're trying to look at the data. You're trying to make investment decisions. In that case, it's very similar to product. It's like, what do you focus on now? What's delivering? And once you launch something, monitoring that and seeing how you can continuously improve or tweak it based on the data.
Outputs tend to mirror your inputs, which in this case is your org structure and your people. And so to your point, there's no ill intent to people being siloed. It's just when you build teams that way, it just accidentally happens even to people's best ability. Whereas if you kind of build in this natural overlapping org structure, you are forcing that communication to happen and it's going to be more aligned by default. You would have to try not to have it aligned versus the other way, you have to try to have it aligned. So I think it's a really interesting way of looking at it. Like, I think it's a really smart move here. Like I said, I just don't let the product team escape me from giving feedback. And our head of product is also our founder. So they're like, he has oversight over marketing as well via me. So we naturally have that. But I think it's an area where you see more and more of this kind of overlap. And then you said like all the other things you said, just add a lot to it, right? You're in the weeds on it the same way. How do you know what's going to work in product when you're doing something new? You have to get down and dirty. AI, like right now, you're building AI on both sides. Why would you have two teams independently building knowledge there? Are you seeing the same kind of AI pick up on the marketing team side, or how separate are those teams now?
Well, they are separate folks just because of, domain expertise and focus.
What people want to do.
Yeah, exactly. So we're definitely further along adopting AI in the product perspective. We've just started sooner. We developed our AI product now over 2 years ago, right when, OpenAI launched ChatGPT, right? We started tinkering. On the marketing side, I'm really excited about lead qualification scoring that we can do. That isn't like the lead qualification scoring from like 5 years ago. It's like really, really, really agentic. So there's like opportunity there. I mentioned how we're lighting up these new channels. We have some really interesting tools we're using that can make our marketing more effective. So there's a lot to dig into.
Yeah. I gotta ask because I'm always curious when people are kind of getting into marketing on this, especially when they're coming with just so much experience in business context. What, I guess, as you've dug into things, what is the thing you found the kind of most unexpected that you've found, or like what's the most surprising thing you've run into as you kind of taken on this new set of roles?
Oh, most surprising. Let's see. That's interesting. I think I don't know if this is surprising, but this is definitely something where I think it's an opportunity. I feel like the organization now has like a really deep tool stack. And I think the marketing tool stack is very complex and there's so many different tools and none of them, they're connected, but they're not connected in the best way. There's nothing perfect. And I get why there's these agencies that kind of help you do all these things and they even build their own bespoke tools for you because it's really hard. The reporting side to have everything holistic and really join up and all that stuff can be very difficult. So I've always heard about that, but I'm feeling it firsthand as I'm digging into the data of like understanding what's performing, what isn't performing, and why, and the details on that.
It's funny because I just kind of take it for the fact that this is just a lot of like SaaS tools you use in marketing. And talking to product people, one of the big feedbacks we've seen and heard is there's just so many different places to go for user feedback data and this, and that there's just so many, like you said, disparate, tweaky, unconnected on the product side. And then I think marketing is like the one org where we put product to shame on the number of tools sometimes. Like there's just so many things you can have. And like you said, they don't talk, even the ones they're supposed to talk to each other, they don't talk to each other that well. And this is one of the areas I'm really curious to see over the next, 5 years, what happens here, because like we've seen this push of every company in the world is pushing to have, all the adjacent areas of product around their main product, as well as the speed of building is sped up. I feel like this has just got to collapse a little bit on product and the marketing side of just less tools and everything that. But separately, I've always been, and I guess as someone new to marketing, I'm curious to get your thought on this. For a long time, I was the marketer who had every tool in the book, and it was like, oh, hey, if we need to solve this, let's go buy the platform that does it. And I've grown a little wary of that approach and more almost probably shied away and gone extreme the other way, where I push the team to like, what can we do where we have to roll our own? What can we do where there isn't a tool yet? What are those things that we can do? Because my hypothesis there is like, once a tool is built, right? Like marketing channels work when they're new because no one else is doing it. So it cuts through noise. As they become more popular, they become less effective because more people are doing it. Like email back in 2005 worked really well. Email now is just spam. And so as someone builds a tool and the tool gets more popular, like as that company grows, unfortunately, that means like the thing that it built is probably less effective as it grows because it becomes a more commonly done thing. Yeah, I don't really have a good question. I'm just more curious your thought on that topic. And does that mirror like things in product maybe at all? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing someone said this to me once. She's like, "Welcome to marketing, where you have all these tools but no engineering help." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right."
so we build more tools to connect the tools without having to code, and they don't work very well.
Yeah, I mean, silly things like I was trying to connect an integration. I'm following exactly their steps, but it's not working. So I have to ask them for support. And then they're like, "Oh, it's a bug in our system," or, things that I haven't had to do in the past because I've always had them been set up for me is, like I'm trying to get, emails set up. I have to know like how you set up the domain, like things like that. I'm getting people to help me, but I also had to like ask ChatGPT, how are there different ways to set these things up?
Yeah.
So I think with any role where it's a little bit open-ended, especially at a company where not everything is established and perfectly, in the right place necessarily, it's like you have to just figure out and get your hands dirty and be a little creative and resourceful.
Yeah, I feel like I've blacked out a lot of that trouble, where here I've been lucky where we very early on resourced for engineers that are dedicated to marketing and go to market. But it's been incredible because a lot of cases, but it is in some ways incredibly eye-opening. And almost you kind of look back and go like, what was I thinking before? Because we'll say, oh, hey, I want to do this. So let's take this tool and do this. And you get an engineer who goes, what? You don't need that tool. We can just do that. I just build that thing in like an hour for you. And you realize like how many times we've bought things or done workarounds where had we just had half-hour engineering time, an hour of engineering time, we would have had a way more elegant solution. And so going back to like, to take it full circle, now that, you have the product team doing some of these, the minor bug fixes and stuff and shipping that to prod, I feel like we should all start going back to CTOs or heads of engineering, VPs of engineering going, hey, we just saved you this time. I want that allocated to these other things so we can have better solutions for it. I'm sure that'll go over great.
Yeah, I'm definitely thinking about what I could use engineering's help on. I have some ideas, but it just has, matter of priority in terms of things that we can fix ourselves versus things that we might need some eng help. But I'm really thinking about like those integration points. Those are where the pain is versus using like, standalone tools is fine for the most part.
I feel like APIs have to be something that are just not going to be, well, they'll probably exist, but the complexity and the kind of prohibitiveness around them cannot be that long for this world.
I've been trying to use some of these off-the-shelf automation tools where they have out-of-the-box integrations with these tools. There's a bunch of them that have popped up and I've tried a few. Unfortunately, none of them are quite where they're at, but they sell a dream.
That's good to know. I won't go seeking it out yet. I'll give it a couple months then.
Well, there's one I've been thinking about trying. I just haven't gotten there. It's on my to-do list.
Well, that's been the fun of AI, right? Is like it doesn't work until it does work, and it oftentimes it can be almost magic seeming step function. A big thing that when we were building our product was we have so we do session replay and analytics, and the point of our software is like surfacing what is important in the digital experience. We were building what we call Ask Galileo, which is like the chat layer. And I had a very strong opinion here on this, which is not surprising if you know me. I was like, we shouldn't just do a chat layer to do like build a chart. It still just seems easier to use the actual to do that than a chat layer. And the chat layer wasn't that great. We were using it internally. It was kind of like, and I took like a 4-day vacation to go to Niagara Falls, and I was staying on Slack and still communicating with people. Came back a week later, and it wasn't like, oh, hey, it's gotten a little bit better. It was like, it magically works in ways we never even thought it was going to. And we had SDRs and customer success people using it to do things that we had never thought it was going to do around understanding user behavior, because there was like some very important but simple seeming unlock that we figured out, and suddenly it just like had all these kind of functionalities that worked all of a sudden. So I feel like there's a lot of that in AI right now.
Well, if I put my product hat on, I wonder if they created better prompts or tooling in the background and you just don't
whatever it was though. But it was like a 4-day change where it was so enormously different, and I've seen that across other companies and tools as well, where just all of a sudden one day it's like, oh, it works now. Cool. Well, speaking of timing and things moving quickly, and the fact that you have both marketing and product on your plate, I do recognize that while I could talk about marketing, and I mean, this is like the perfect interview. You're marketing and product, and we're talking about AI. I could do this for hours, but you have real responsibilities that you have to get back to. So I appreciate you coming on. This is really interesting to learn about. Cool to see how you think about product and marketing as a function where a joint leadership, and then just functionally how the team over there is using AI and how you kind of push that forward. I appreciate you coming on. If people have questions or want to ask more, can they reach out to you on LinkedIn, or is there a better way to?
Yeah, it's great. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so people can feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome. Well, Karen, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. This is fantastic, and I have to follow up a little bit and see how it's all going across some of these things, because I'm always really curious when people get into marketing how it goes. So hopefully we can talk again soon.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. Have a good one.
Thanks.